I couldn't stop him. And then it happened. I still remember that night as if it just happened yesterday. It began like any other ordinary evening. Nothing unusual. Nothing that could have warned me about what was coming. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Have you ever had that strange gut feeling when you know something is about to change forever, but you just don't know how? That's exactly what I felt. I couldn't stop him. I tried, I really did. And then it happened. The story I'm about to share with you is not made up. It's a true story that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I think about it. Back then, everything seemed normal. Friends laughing, family around, life moving on at its usual pace. But sometimes, it's the ordinary days that hide the most extraordinary moments. He was someone close to me, someone I trusted, someone I thought I understood completely. But that night showed me a side of him I had never seen before. I could sense something was off in the way he moved, the way he spoke less and less. I kept asking if he was okay, but he brushed it off with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Maybe if I had insisted, maybe if I had been stronger, things would have turned out differently. But at that moment, I froze between doubt and fear, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do. And then, in a single moment, everything shifted. My heart raced, the silence grew heavier, and before I knew it, I was standing in the middle of something I never thought I'd face in my life. What happened next is something I'll never forget. But before I tell you that, let me take you back to where it all truly began. It all really began a few weeks before that night. Looking back now, there were small signs, little details that didn't seem important at the time, but make so much sense today. He wasn't always like that. He used to be the kind of person who filled every room with energy, always joking, always making sure no one around him felt left out. People were naturally drawn to him, and I was no different. He wasn't just a friend, he was like family to me. But slowly, something started to change. At first, I thought it was just stress. He was working long hours, barely sleeping, and always saying he had too much on his mind. When I asked, he would laugh it off and tell me not to worry. But behind that laugh, I noticed his eyes looked tired, almost haunted. There were times when I caught him staring off into the distance, as if he was trapped in his own thoughts. I wanted to help, but he never let me in completely. It was like he was carrying a weight he didn't want anyone else to feel. The more I tried to get close, the more distant he became. He started skipping out on our usual hangouts, making excuses for why he couldn't show up. The calls grew shorter, the messages fewer. I told myself it was just a phase, that he'd bounce back like he always did. But that uneasy feeling in my chest kept growing. Something wasn't right, and no matter how much I tried to ignore it, it followed me everywhere. Then came that evening, the one I can't forget. He showed up unexpectedly, quiet and restless. I asked him if he was okay, and again he just gave me that same smile, the one that looked more like a mask than the real him. I knew in my heart he was hiding something, but I didn't know what. I wanted to push harder, but there was this strange distance in the room, like an invisible wall between us. The tension kept building, and I could feel my own heartbeat rising, matching the silence that wrapped around us. He kept pacing, his words stumbling as though he wanted to say something but couldn't bring himself to. Every second felt heavier. Every glance told me more than words ever could. I couldn't stop him. And deep inside, I knew that whatever was about to happen would change everything. But I had no idea just how far it was about to go. That night kept pulling me into a storm I couldn't escape. The more I looked at him, the more questions filled my mind. Why was he acting so strange? What was he holding back? His silence was louder than any words. He would start to speak, then stop halfway, as if something inside him kept pulling him back. And every time he turned away, I felt the distance between us grow deeper. The conflict wasn't just with him, it was inside me too. Part of me wanted to press harder, to demand answers, to not let him walk away again. But another part was afraid. Afraid of what I might discover if I pushed too far. Sometimes, knowing the truth can be heavier than living with the unknown. And maybe at that moment, I wasn't ready to hear what he had to say. In the days before this night, I had started noticing other pieces of the puzzle. He had been avoiding not just me, but almost everyone close to him. Friends told me he had stopped showing up at places he used to love. His phone would often go unanswered, and when he did pick up, his voice carried this weight, like he was somewhere far away even when he was right in front of you. His family, too, seemed worried, though they didn't share much. All of us were connected by the same uneasy feeling, but no one truly knew what he was battling. I kept thinking back to the little things, conversations we once had where he hinted at how overwhelming life felt for him. I had brushed them off, thinking it was just a passing mood. Now, standing there watching him, I realized those moments were not random. They were pieces of a bigger story he never told me. He paced the room again, his steps restless, his eyes searching for something invisible. I wanted to reach out, to stop the spiral I could almost see happening in front of me. But something froze me in place. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was shock, or maybe it was that deep sense of knowing I was about to witness something that would stay with me forever. And as the minutes stretched into what felt like hours, I understood that the conflict was no longer just his. It had become mine too. Whatever happened next was going to leave a mark neither of us could erase. The air in the room grew heavier with each passing second. He kept pacing back and forth, his eyes darting toward the door, then toward me, and then down at the floor, as if he couldn't hold his own thoughts together. Every movement made my heart pound harder. I could feel the weight of something building, something just out of reach, like a storm about to break, but refusing to let the first drop fall. I wanted to speak, but the words caught in my throat. All I managed was his name, softly, almost like a whisper. He froze for a second, his shoulders tense, as if he wanted to turn and face me but couldn't. That silence stretched so long it felt unbearable. I could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the house, each second hitting like a reminder that time was running out. Then he finally looked at me, and in that look I saw more than he could ever say. Fear, regret, confusion, everything was written across his face. I took a step closer, hoping he might let me in. But instead, he stepped back, shaking his head slowly, like he was warning me not to get involved. That single gesture sent a chill through me. I wasn't sure if he was protecting me from what he was carrying or if he was trying to protect himself from letting it out. The room felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in on us. I kept thinking back to all the times I had brushed off those little signs, those half-finished sentences, those moments when he seemed distant. Maybe this was the breaking point he had been walking toward all along. And I was standing right in the middle of it. My phone buzzed on the table, the sound startling both of us. For a second, his eyes flickered to it, and I caught something in his expression. Panic, maybe, or guilt. I couldn't tell. I reached for the phone, but before I could check, he spoke for the first time that night. His voice was low, uneven, but it carried a weight that made me stop breathing. "You don't understand," he said, almost to himself. "It's too late." Those 3 words set my chest on fire. Too late for what? What was he hiding? I wanted to demand answers, but he turned away again, running his hand through his hair, pacing like a man on the edge of a cliff. I followed him with my eyes, waiting for some sign, some clue about what he was about to do. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows. The sound seemed to echo the chaos inside the room. He muttered something I couldn't catch, and every instinct inside me screamed to stop him, to do something before it was too late. But my feet stayed rooted where I stood. My hand shook, and my thoughts raced faster than I could process them. The tension was unbearable now. It felt like we were standing at the edge of something irreversible, a moment that could not be undone. And as he moved toward the door, his face pale, his jaw clenched, I knew the climax of this story was just a breath away. Something was about to happen that would change both of us forever. His grip on the phone was tight, almost desperate, and I could see the veins in his hand tremble as though he was holding back a flood of emotions. For a moment, I thought he might smash the phone or throw it away, but instead, he stared at the screen, frozen. His silence was heavier than words, and that silence told me something was about to shift. I waited, every nerve in my body on edge, bracing for what was coming. Then he looked at me, his eyes raw with something I couldn't fully read. Fear, guilt, and something else I couldn't place. "They've been lying," he whispered, voice cracking. "Everyone has. Even the ones you trust." His words hit me like a jolt. Until now, I had believed this conflict was only his, something personal, something hidden deep inside him. But this twist pulled me into an even darker place. This wasn't just his burden anymore. It was bigger, wider, involving more people than I had imagined. I stumbled back, trying to process what he was saying. Lying about what? I asked, though my voice barely came out. My chest felt tight, as though I wasn't ready for his answer. He shook his head and paced again, muttering under his breath, words I couldn't catch. The only thing clear was the growing panic in his movements. Another buzz from my phone lit up the room. This time, he didn't try to stop me. I picked it up and saw another message, but it wasn't from the same friend. It was from someone I hadn't spoken to in months. The message was short, urgent, and strange. "Don't believe everything he says. Ask him about that night." My heart skipped a beat. What night? Why would someone else send this now, in the middle of everything? I looked up at him, but before I could say anything, he spoke first. "You see? They're already pulling you in. They don't want you to know what really happened." His voice had risen now, filled with desperation. He ran a hand through his hair and let out a shaky laugh that wasn't laughter at all. It was the sound of someone cornered. The suspense pressed in tighter. My mind raced between his words and the message on my phone. Two sides, two truths, and I was caught in the middle, unsure who to trust. Was he hiding something dark, or was there a web of lies surrounding him that I had only just stumbled into? The room felt like it was spinning as he stepped closer, his eyes burning with intensity. "If you want answers," he said slowly, "you have to choose. Believe them or believe me. But once you decide, there's no turning back." The stakes had never been higher. What began as a story about his silence had now grown into something tangled with secrets, lies, and a past I didn't understand. And as he stood there waiting for me to respond, I realized this was no longer just a story. It had become mine too, and whatever truth was about to surface would change both of us forever. The silence between us felt like a ticking bomb. My heart pounded as his words echoed in my mind. Believe them or believe me. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then I finally spoke, my voice trembling but steady enough to cut through the tension. "I don't care about sides. I just want the truth." He stopped pacing. His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time that night, he looked almost calm, like he had been waiting for me to say that. He let out a slow breath and whispered, "It wasn't an accident that night." The words hit me like a thunderclap. My body froze as the message from earlier flashed in my mind. Ask him about that night. I wanted to run, but I forced myself to stay still. "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat dry. He turned away, his shoulders heavy, and finally told me everything. There had been an incident weeks ago, one that no one wanted to speak about. Something had happened when he was with people we both knew, something that had been covered up to protect reputations, to avoid questions. The family, the friends, they weren't just worried about him. They were hiding the truth too. As he spoke, the puzzle pieces I had been holding onto fell into place. His distance, his silence, the messages, it all connected back to that single night. The climax of his struggle wasn't just guilt. It was the crushing weight of carrying a secret he was never meant to carry alone. Tears filled his eyes as he finally said, "I thought I could handle it, but it's been eating me alive." His voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability he had been hiding behind all this time. In that moment, I knew he wasn't lying to me. But just when I thought the truth had finally been revealed, another twist came. My phone buzzed one last time. I glanced down, expecting another warning, but instead, the message read, "If he told you everything, then you already know too much. Be careful who you trust next." A chill ran through me. Even with the truth out in the open, the story wasn't over. His conflict had pulled me into something larger, something I hadn't even begun to understand. And as I looked at him, broken but relieved, I realized that the real danger might not have been him at all. It was the people who had wanted this secret buried forever. I stared at that last message for what felt like forever, my hands shaking as the weight of everything sank in. He had finally told me the truth, but now it seemed the truth was only one layer of something bigger. For a moment, I wondered if I should show him the message, but I stopped myself. He was already fragile, already carrying more than anyone should. Adding this to his burden wouldn't help. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my pocket and focused on him. He looked exhausted, like years of carrying that secret had drained every part of him. But at the same time, there was something new in his expression, relief. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, he wasn't hiding from me anymore. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I should have told you sooner." I shook my head gently. "You don't have to apologize. You just have to stop carrying it alone." That night ended with us sitting in silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because we finally didn't need words. The truth had changed everything between us, but it also brought us closer in a way I never expected. The lies, the distance, the endless tension, they were finally behind us. In the days that followed, things weren't magically fixed. The fallout of that night still lingered, and the questions about who else was involved remained unanswered. But something inside me shifted. I realized that the real story wasn't about the secret itself, but about the weight of silence and how it can break someone down. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do for someone isn't to solve their problems. It's to stand beside them when they finally decide to face them. And that mysterious final message? I chose to let it go. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was just another attempt to keep the truth buried. Either way, I knew one thing for certain. I had already seen enough to understand what mattered. Looking back now, I think about how easy it is to miss the signs when someone close to us is struggling. We brush things off, assume they'll be fine, and wait for them to come back around. But sometimes, what they really need is for us to notice, to ask again, and to be willing to sit in the silence until they're ready to speak. That's the lesson I carried with me. The night I couldn't stop him turned into the night I finally stood still long enough to hear him. And though the story didn't end the way I thought it would, it left me with one truth I'll never forget. Sometimes, being there is enough to change everything.